Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we have an exciting one. We are going to be reviewing the all-new Proto discs in the Ricky Wysocki lineup from Discraft. Here I have the Proto Halix, and here I have the Proto Fossil. Halix is supposed to be a more controllable onyx. Flight numbers are very similar, 10503. I believe the onyx is 10603. So just a little bit less glide with this disc. And the Fossil has the flight numbers of 3103. Obviously, this thing is eerily similar to the Pig, which I think is what Ricky was looking for, kind of like a more controllable approach disc. A little bit more overstable, less glide than the Zone. Enough of me talking. We're here to test this out, see how they fly, and see if they should belong in your bag. So let's get straight into the video. Looking at the Halix first, this disc is eerily similar to the onyx. Things I noticed that the rim is pretty concave. It's very steep at the very end, creating this lip. Depth feels pretty good in the hand. Doesn't feel too deep or too shallow. Feels just right. Feels comfortable too. Feels like your fingers slot well into the disc. Looking at the Fossil, this disc is very similar to a Pig. I don't have a Pig with me, but this thing has a little bit of dome, as you can hear. I'm not sure what specifically this plastic is, but it's very tacky, grippy. Some of the best baseline plastic I've ever felt. It's gummy, but not too gummy. It kind of just feels like no matter what conditions, it's not going to slip out of your hand, which is pretty important. And honestly, same thing with this Proto Halix. I talked about this in videos past, but it seems like Discraft has kind of changed the blend of their ESP. Obviously, I don't know if this is technically their ESP blend. This is a prototype disc. It just feels better. Although this is a little bit less tacky than this plastic, it's still grippy. I don't know. I'm kind of excited to test these out. I'm assuming these are going to be pretty overstable. Typically in Ricky's bag, most stuff is pretty overstable, and he just uses them both for backhand and forehand. So we'll go with the Proto Halix first. I'm going to throw across the way and kind of give you an idea of how far these things go. All right, kind of switched angles here. I'm going to throw more directly across. I think it's like 380 to those benches over there. So test it out. I'm just going to throw this like 70% controlled slide hyzer, kind of normally how I throw a backhand, and see how this thing reacts. I'm assuming it's going to be pretty stable. Got a little bit of flip to it and a little bit more push than I was expecting for a 70% throw. Honestly, flew very nice. Cannot complain with that. Next, try this Fossil. Almost called it a Pig, funny enough, but let's see how stable this puppy is. I'm gonna throw it similar, slide hyzer, flat. So that thing, funny enough, oh yeah, definitely the one glide seems true. It wanted to push. It got a little bit more push than I was expecting, but then once it was slowing down, just kind of dropped out of the sky. I'm gonna go get those, throw them with a little bit more power, and see if they react any differently. Maybe throw them on a couple different angles. Let's see. Changed angle. Wanted to kind of like open up the field so in case I shank it. Now we're gonna throw it kind of like 95%. I kind of just want to see how these react when you put a little bit more power onto it. Oh, got some nice flip to it. That was like 85%. I'll put the distance in the screen below, but that thing flew super nice. Pretty true to the flight numbers. Maybe has, yeah, pretty true to the flight numbers. Maybe it would have like a negative 0.5 turn. Discraft doesn't do that, but I think it has a little bit more turn than expected, a little bit more understability. Fossil up next. Let's throw this on a little bit of anhyzer to see if it wants to pan out quick or if it just wants to hold the ante and then slow down and drop. I'm expecting it wants to fight out, but let's try it out. Threw it high. Threw it much higher than I wanted. I hope you could have seen that. Kind of pulled it right, but it wanted to just slowly pan out, and I think the lack of glide makes it not want to finish as much. I'm gonna throw one more time, and then we'll do some forehands, and then we'll wrap this up. All right, let's throw that Proto Fossil one more time. Funny enough, I threw this 327 feet, which doesn't make any sense. It's kind of a shank too, so maybe a slight anhyzer this time so I don't shank it, and then you can kind of see the true flight and how it reacts trying to fight out of it. And then we'll throw these forehand. Slide anhyzer. And you can see, as I predicted correctly, that disc just does not want to necessarily fight out due to the lack of glide. So it's kind of an interesting disc. It's kind of like you put it on the line and it'll hold it. And once it loses speed, it'll kind of just plop. Almost kind of Berg-esque. It's kind of like what you want a really beat up zone to fly like, but just for like more controlled distance. So you're not going too far. So even more controlled in the zone. But let's throw some forehands. For those of you that don't know me, my forehand is kind of in that novice intermediate level. I wouldn't even say intermediate, but it's getting better. Shout out to all the people that have watched my forehand over the past year and some change. It's been a journey, but excited to see how this one flies. Yeah, hopefully it gets a little bit of slight forward push before it finishes. So pretty good. I probably went like 220 feet. Got a little bit of push. I'm gonna throw it one more time probably. Let's throw this fossil similar. Throw it a little bit more flat, higher. See how it reacts. A little bit higher. Controlled forehand disc. That disc kind of reminds me of like my beat up Toro. But let me throw that Hallux one more time and then we'll wrap this up. Boom. That was a good forehand for me. And it was probably very similar distance, but feels good out of the hand. For anyone that's like my arm speed, which is like low 50s on a good day for my forehand, maybe mid 50s if I'm feeling really good. It's gonna be that consistent finish for like shorter shots. I feel like someone, kind of like how you saw with my backhand, with like a more advanced sidearm will get some flip and push and then get that consistent fade at the end. But yeah, let's give my final thoughts. All right, guys, to kind of wrap up this video, after reviewing both the Proto Hallux and Proto Fossil, I was very pleased with this Hallux. It flew a little bit different than the flight numbers say. I think it is a very reliable disc, but I think you can get a little bit more push out of it, although it didn't turn out of my hand. For my arm speed, I was expecting something that was just gonna go and kind of dump, but this gets a lot of forward push with a little bit of a solid fade at the end, but not a dumping fade at the end, which is kind of really important for people looking to get a little bit extra distance out of their discs. Besides that, on forehand, it wasn't spectacular for me. I don't have a spectacular forehand though, so I can't really say much there. Yeah, but overall, this disc honestly might go in my bag. I currently have an Honor in my bag right now that doesn't get as much push as I was liking, and this might be able to fill the slot. Really excited for this. This fossil reminds me a lot of my beat up Toro. My beat up Toro, I throw it on shots where I want to just have a controlled finish, where it finishes a little bit straighter than a typical overstable approach disc. And since it has so little glide, it'll kind of want to just die and kind of check skip to the basket. Very similar flight. As you saw, when I threw it on a little bit of anhyzer, flatter, it kind of just wanted to hold that line. And it wanted to fight out, but it doesn't really have the glide to want to fight out and fade back, so it would just die and kind of check land softly. And I would say that's really nice. It's, in my opinion, I think it's hard to find a disc that flies like this because most are pretty overstable or they don't get the distance. For example, the Berg I think is a really good slot for the low glide, kind of just check skip, but it doesn't get as much distance compared to like a zone. And I think like a zone or a Toro, right out of the bag or for certain runs, most of the time they want to dump out of your hand, which may not be what most people are looking for. I would say that that's a great slot, but a glidey straight pushing disc is also a very good tool to have in your bag. Save a lot of strokes. Yeah, that kind of does it for this video. If you want to check either of these out, they do release tonight, I believe at midnight, but they'll be live on my website tonight. If you want to check them out, www.discone.com. I got a bunch of these. I also got a bunch of other discs there too. Pre-owned, new, collectible. Check them out. Sadly, Avi and Manny weren't able to make it to this video with the days getting shorter. It's a little bit tougher, but hope you guys enjoyed. Really appreciate all the support. Happy holidays to all of you. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.